Welcome to the Mother Architect podcast. My name is River, also known as Rachel. And on today's episode, we have Michelle Bonilla, who is an energy healer. I have been in touch with her for the last 5 or 6 months. She has been something of a mentor and a guide as I have been going through this spiritual awakening journey. Her insights and wisdom and prescriptions as to how to move through it have been incredibly helpful to me. I love who she is and what she has to share. So we got a little bit cut short in this interview because she had a client lined up and then we were running a little bit behind. We had like a little hiccup at the beginning. So I want to have her on again and I want to ask her your questions. So if anybody has any questions for her for the next time, please comment them below. And if anybody wants to get in touch with her, I will link her contact information below. She does one-on-one personal work with people over Zoom or over video call. And she's been gracious enough to mentor me over the last several months, or 5 or 6 months, give or take. I'm really bad at math if you haven't realized that. I'm bad at on-the-spot math. I'm a visual person, but she's awesome. And I'm really excited for you to share in this conversation that we had together. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Welcome,
Thank you
Tia
so much.
Michelle.
You're so
And
kind. Thank you.
I call you Tia, which is
Mhm.
an interesting story behind that, but your name is Michelle Bonilla. And how would you call what it is that you do?
So I would tell you that I don't do anything, and that uh, I'm a vehicle for the work. And so I do energy medicine, and I have a lot of training in lots of different directions. So I do, on one end, counseling for trauma, and go through body work, energy work, craniosacral work, trauma work. And on the other end, I'm an Ayurvedic doc. So I look at it through the Eastern methods of healing.
That's awesome. And how long have you been doing that?
Forty
How long have you not been doing this?
45 years. I was actually kind of born to do this. It took me a while to figure that out, but 45 years.
That's incredible.
Full-time practice is, I think, 40.
Amazing. So for my listeners and friends, the way that I was introduced to Michelle, I was going through something you might call like a spiritual awakening last year. And it was a full body experience, trauma emerging and demanding to be dealt with. And I was also having like visions and seeing into realms that I have not seen into for most of my life. I've had spiritual experiences. I've had experiences with entities and energies, but very few and far between. And that all occurred within like my days in evangelicalism. So I have rationalized all of that as being like a hallucinatory, just getting caught up in the spirit of everything and being indoctrinated at a young age. So I had written off a lot of those experiences. So I didn't really know what to make of what I was experiencing, except that I knew it was a God thing, except that I didn't want to believe in God anymore. And I had some people in my life who were concerned. I was saying some out-of-pocket things because I was seeing things that defied any earthly explanation. I was having visions of things that I still lack language for. And in just where I was at, I was definitely like oversharing and trying to find people to like talk to about it. And so these concerned sweethearts were saying like, we think you might be going through a manic episode or experiencing psychosis. And I was pretty sure I was not. I've been through some mental health episodes before, and that isn't what this was. And so in doing my due diligence, I went to my medical doctor of like many years, maybe 5 or 6 years. And it was like a huge leap of faith for me because I'm like, she's a medical doctor and I trust her, but also, she might be like, we need to put you under like a mandatory 72-hour hold. And so it was very nerve-wracking for me, but I felt really strongly I needed to just share openly with her. And so I did. And not only was it the most like beautiful conversation, like mutual tears, and like spirit gave me a word for her that was very confirming for her of everything that I was experiencing. And then the last thing she said is, I'm going to put you in touch with Tia. And so I'm talking about my doctor, who is your lifelong, like one of your lifelong best friends. And that was just such a crazy connection and connecting point, and just shows you how beautifully spirit works if you
100%.
have courage to follow through with the intuition or the intuitive like instincts. So in meeting with you, we then began to have like different phone calls and FaceTimes, and you've been so helpful in listening and validating and filling in the gaps of my knowledge and sharing your perspectives and giving me encouragements of like how to proceed. Or but you're honestly, like you said, when you said you don't do anything, you're not pushy about anything. You're kind of like, at least in my experience with you, you've been like a guide to help me process through what spirit is speaking to me, but not trying to influence that in one way or another. Would you say that that's accurate to the work that you do with most people?
Yeah. Yes. What I call people or tell people is, you're brought to me through spirit. And then somewhere between the guidance that I receive internally and your conversation, I see how I can best help and best guide you to what you need, and also to deepen your connection with spirit, as opposed to it being through me or through anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been saying spirit, and I think something when it comes to, energy work, light work, all of these like, you know, new age concepts, which are really the oldest
Old.
age concepts. So the religions of today are the new age religions and the new age paradigms. But people can get hung up on language because they immediately see it as an identifier, a
Right.
disqualifier, or like, oh, I can trust this person because they talk like me and they use the same language that I do. When you and I first met, what I said to you was like, what I know is that this is a God thing, and I don't know what to do with that. And I think what you said was like, well, of course, honey, all of this is a God thing. I was wondering if you would you mind sharing your first experiences with your spiritual gifts or your connection to spirit, to source, and how you first realized that maybe you saw into other realms or spaces that maybe most people aren't connected to?
I'm happy to. So I'm not special. I'm not anything more or less than anyone else on the planet Earth. I believe we all have gifts. I believe a lot of them lie dormant or get awakened in some way at some point, by God and by your own work, like whatever you do for your own healing, evolution of consciousness, opening your heart, all those things. When I was 6 years old, I realized that I saw things that were pretty normal in my family, but were not in the range of normal in regular conversations with people. And that's when I first realized I could see things that other people couldn't see at that time, or only a few of my family members could. And so I can see in different dimensions. I am very, very blessed to be intuitive and also to be connected to it. And then over the years, I developed it and did meditation and exercises that helped open that up even more, and helped me build my own way of trusting the information. Because I think that's a big piece. Once things start opening up, how is it defined in our society? So in the Western world, when you have the kind of awakening you're talking about, Rachel, and that kind of experience, If you were in the East, we would take you to a spiritual place or a church or an ashram or something and give you support and help you. Here, we tend to medicate people. And sometimes the medication is necessary for certain things that are happening. If it's some part of a trauma response or a trauma off gas is what I call it. There's something going on inside of you that needs out. And I wanted to commend you for being brave and talking to your doctor and having your doc be able to understand more than just what they were taught in medicine and
Mhm.
medical school in the United States. And medicine, medical school physicians are amazing and totally 100% needed. And medicine's about 300 years old, something like that. And then Ayurvedic medicine is 7,000 years old. And not right or wrong or good or bad, just stages of development and also stages of how it helps and what it does to help.
Mhm. Western medicine, at times, like, that's been the way that I have been able to survive,
Yeah,
and
totally makes sense.
and what I admire about, I won't say her name just to for privacy's sake,
Mhm.
but what I admire about my doctor, your friend, is early on, very clearly, she practices Western medicine, medication, very practical, what you would expect from a primary caregiver, uh,
Mhm.
a primary care physician. And also, I remember there were times where I'm like, I just can't sleep. And, like whatever this medication, it's like it works sometimes, but not others. And she would also prescribe, like, well, have you tried listening to singing bowls and doing breath work before bed?
Mhm.
She's like, I know that sounds cuckoo bananas, but the studies back it up.
Right,
And, I'm like, I can really try this. And then trying it and be like, wouldn't you know? Wow, there's something to this.
right.
Um, yeah, so definitely a place in our world for classical Western modalities, which I guess classical isn't even the right word. It's young. It's still a young
Well,
practice.
so what you're describing is really the advent of what now is called functional medicine, which is that the physician takes all that they know medically, but they also take into account who you are as a person,
Mhm.
what your experiences are, what kind of stresses you're under, what kind of trauma you've been through, what kind of mindset you have. And it includes that to add in things like listening to Hertz music, listening to singing bowls. And we're finally getting there. We're finally, instead of it being this or that, it's all of it.
Mhm.
And that's how we can really help people and guide people and treat people. Because whatever you have might be very similar to something that somebody else has, but they're not you. So they're going to have it through a different filtration system or a different
Mhm.
life choices, or maybe they weren't raised as in the kind of religious household you were raised in. Maybe they were raised in a different kind of household or not. And that has to be taken into consideration so that it can be the most help to you and it makes sense in your own head.
Mhm.
And then you get to try stuff and you can say that didn't work or it did work. But that's also true for medicine. There's many different ways to treat depression. There's many different ways to treat, or help with chemotherapy. I mean, we do it all the time. We just don't think of it that way yet, or we're
Right.
starting to think about it that way.
Yeah, no two bodies are the same.
Uh-huh.
No two experiences are the same. So like no diagnosis will ever be like a one size fits all diagnosis.
Correct.
And I think that's where like medicine, Western medicine still has room to grow in seeing people as very like unique individuals that might need more than Western modalities to aid them in their healing or health journey, or their just their health because
Right.
It is. It just is. And what you're saying is very aligned with, I just spoke with Katie Asher. Do you recall in our conversations, we've talked about telepathy tapes, and I sent
Yes.
you. Okay, so I have been connected with Katie for the last 6 months. She's the mom of one of the non-speaking spellers featured in Telepathy Tapes podcast. And I got
Cool.
to have a conversation with her for this podcast last week. So she and Houston, they're evangelical Christians. And their paradigm has been like their worldview and their understanding of like spirit and the nature of God has been confronted and I wouldn't say challenged. Maybe she would use that word, maybe not. I don't want to put words into her experience, but expanded for sure. To like she even says Houston's synesthetic experience as
Mhm.
someone with profound spiritual gifts, like his synesthetic experience isn't even the same as like somebody that has comparable gifts to him. And not to I don't say that to diminish anyone else's gifts, but like what Houston and a lot of these non-speakers can see goes far beyond what I think any of us could ever imagine is real about what we're experiencing. And she even talks about how, based on just what we understand about physics and science currently, we as human beings with our five physical senses are only perceiving about 4% of what is actually available, like in the visible light spectrum and the electron.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so low, and what I tell people, if so why do you and there's also studies, with watching like a car accident, like on tape or in real life and putting people in six different positions. None of them get it. None of them describe it accurately like a video camera. It
Hmm.
all goes through their perception, and also there's details that you can't see from one angle that you can see from another angle, but you then can't see the first set of visuals from that angle. And I think we're starting to get smarter about that. I think we're starting to understand that there's not a reality, that there's not a universe, that there's not a right perception. There is perception, and there's your experience in your perception and other people's experience in your perception. But, we tend to be very black and white in this society, which I think is starting to soften, thank God. And
Yeah.
so, it's like trying to describe somebody's blue eyes. Some people's blue eyes have yellow flecks in them. Some people's blue eyes have a rim around them. There's nothing wrong. We don't have to make any of the eyes wrong. We're just trying to find language to describe non localized experiences with our 4%.
Hmm. Something that you and I have talked a lot about, as you mentioned, we live in a very materialist, behaviorist, like everything's cut and dry. There is
Mhm.
finality, everything is hyper compartmentalized and hyper individualized.
Right.
But we're living in a very specific time in history right now, and there are some big changes happening. This is part of my awakening process of realizing, like, oh, I've been asleep this whole time, and there's something happening that my awareness, my attention, my energy being intentionally directed at this time in history is needed and is part of the shift. So we've talked about this shift that's happening,
Mhm.
and you have been part of partnering with certain communities, ushering in that shift, and that's been part of your journey and your story from the time you were a little girl. That's why you're here. And I was hoping you would be willing to share about that, like what you're doing in Colorado.
So, I lived in Houston for 45 years, and most of my practice was there. And then COVID came, and I, like everyone else, didn't know what was happening. And 24 years ago, I sat in meditation and asked what was next, just a really open ended question to God. And I literally saw how I bought this house that I'm sitting in now and the road, the crazy road that it leads to it. And I had no idea where it was. And so I was like, great. I so appreciate that. Thank you so much. I know we look like a little blue marble running through space, God. Um, but I have no idea where this is. So then I sat down with a map and another friend, and we got in meditation. And when we opened our eyes, we literally circled the map and the town that I'm close to. And um, it was the third house when I got a realtor. And I have never had well, I don't know that that's exactly true. I have had similar experiences, but not so physical reality by this home kind of place. And so I did. And so I've literally been placed here. And it turns out that um, it's an amazing community that I live in. But the other piece is it's helping me to be able to have enough peace and quiet to open more. And one of the things I would say to your people that are watching this is I'm not special. Rachel's not special. I mean, you are, but not. Um, all of us have gifts. It's just like all of us have, the ability to skateboard and they're really great at it. And somebody else is a good skier and maybe they translate all the things. It's the same with opening to your deeper self and connecting to God, whatever that means to you. And so I'm actually in several communities where um, we help people get there. It's a long process, but it's also a necessary process because it just takes time to integrate and to also change your perspective, but also change a patterning that you have that might not be as beneficial or might be bumping up against what your new experience is as you open your heart and as you open your connection to the divine one. And I would tell people that that's a very personal journey. No one gets to tell you you shouldn't be doing it that way or you're doing it wrong.
Right.
um, you're doing it. There's 7.5 billion of us on this planet. There's now we know from the James Webb, there's billions, gazillions of galaxies. I mean, we just don't know what we don't know. And you all have the room if you're willing to just sit in the quiet space of your consciousness and in meditation to connect. And then sometimes you're sent a guide, like I was sent to you, but you're your guide. I'm not the guide. I am a piece of your teamwork as you explore and move through what is very particular to you, and it's your godlight expression.
I definitely have follow-up questions on that, but
Okay.
I wanted to ask you to share also about the indigenous communities that you work with, if you are comfortable with that.
I
I
am.
know it's
Uh,
very sacred work.
it is very sacred work, and I have, and for some people, this is super important. It's not super important in some of the communities I'm in. But for some people, there's this whole idea that you have to be indigenous in order to pray in an indigenous way or to be part of a community. And what I would tell you guys is the indigenous communities, some are very much like that, and they're very closed off. And there's a lot of them that realize we all need to pray and that we are at a particular time where we're over polluting the earth and we're not connected to nature in the way that we used to be thousands of years ago, or even maybe even 200 years ago, really. And that they're very gracious and very generous. And they just know that people need to pray. And I've been fortunate enough to be invited into one of those communities. And so I now um, guide in that sense in that community too. And we're at a time that there's a prophecy that was written down in 1490. It was oral up to then, that talked about the condor and the eagle flying together. And we're in that time. But we're also in a time where um, there's a lot of hatred on the planet. There's a lot of conflict on the planet. And I believe, as does some of the people in my communities, that peace will come if you're peaceful inside. If you can disarm yourself, then hurting your neighbor is out of the question. Whether your
Mhm.
neighbor is in Gaza or Israel or Fred or the person that you think looks different that you don't like because they look different or whatever, you need to disarm that. We're at a time that we all live on a very small blue marble, and we need to be of help and service and love and light to each other.
Yeah.
And judging each other is not the way. It just leads to more conflict. And then when you start studying meditation and you look at things like Deepak Chopra or almost any meditation, singing bowls, whatever, it's about peacefulness, it's about your breath, it's about you connecting to your life force. And then through your life force, you can connect to all the life force around Rachel and friends and kittens and dogs, which we all prefer, and then cows and cloud beans and the standing nation of the trees and all the things. It's all the same. It's all one thing. It's all energetic light and it's all life force
Yeah.
and energy and spirit, the manifestation of spirit on a physical reality that
Mhm.
our 4% of our vision can see.
Yeah.
There's 96% that we have no idea what's going on.
Right, and I think those of us who, have really committed to a faith journey of, like, letting
Mhm,
spirit lead, like,
mhm.
maybe we see, like, 6%. And it's accessible to anyone
Right,
who learns that art of stillness and anyone who can sit with themselves, uh you know, you're on a beautiful property in Colorado and have that quiet, and you have the ability to find peace and sanctuary and silence. And I feel like when we pursue those things and we create spaces for ourselves, not feel like, I know and have experienced that when we can find stillness and quiet, those extra sensory perceptors, you know, spirit, our spiritual eyes open up.
right.
And what you're talking about, oh, how did you phrase it? You said the more we find peace within, the more like that's what we see in the world. We are somehow,
And we create.
yeah.
If I'm if I remove what makes me angry or judgy or um cantankerous or whatever, then I can't be at war and I can't be at conflict. And I'm going to be seeking peace in our conversations. I'm going to be seeking peace in our interactions.
Mhm.
And if we all do that, it literally war will stop.
Yeah.
We are the prayer.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I lost your image there.
Yeah, I don't know what just happened. Okay.
Oh, there we are. What you're talking about, uh, you talked about the car crash. You're
Hmm.
basically you're talking about, like, relativity. I had to grab this book off of my desk. Like,
Yes,
you're talking
absolutely.
about, you know, relativity, you're talking about quantum mechanics, something that we connected over, like, the day that we met. It's like, you love to study quantum physics in your free time,
Hmm.
and I'm the same way of, like, I'm not saying that I have anything other than a layman's understanding of it, but when I study these these physical laws of the universe, or the way that matter behaves as we're able to observe it,
Hmm.
I see it reflected back in the most ancient of teachings or ancient, like, wisdoms. I see it reflected back in
Right.
like Hinduism, Buddhism, the teachings of Christ, just to name a few.
And charismatic Christianity, which is
Mhm.
the there's a whole meditational section of Christianity that people may or may not know about that is the same. It's still we're back to the it's all the same.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter how you plug into it. What matters is that you plug into it,
Yeah.
because that's where you're going to find your inner wisdom and you're going to also act from godlight.
The way that our journeys evolve, the way that we grow as we just move along in faith day by day. Um,
Mhm.
there's always a wrestling of like, this is my instinct and my sense, but I've been taught that the opposite is true, and I'm having to wrestle against what I've been taught. And we have been taught to look at our differences as a society and culture. We have been taught to look at boundaries and borders
Mhm.
between nations and between
Totally.
states and cities and neighbors and property lines and people. But when you start to study the atom, subatomic particles, molecules, nothing is that simple. Everything is connected. And what you're saying, like when we're talking about relativity, like you can witness a car crash from 6 points of view, and everyone's going to come away with a different perspective based on their vantage point. I really believe, and that's why I'm having this conversation with you, that the more that we can come together, put judgment aside, and look at what we have in common. You know, coming from an
Yes.
evangelical Christian background, talking about, I'm going to do air quotes again, new age concepts. That doesn't feel comfortable. That feels wrong, because that's how I was taught. But I
Right.
really believe, like what you say, the stillness that we find within ourselves, the peace that we cultivate within ourselves, that is what we then tune into. It's like we create and materialize it as we tune into it. And it's been the most bonkers thing to experience because I am, at baseline, a pessimist and like the most negative person. But when I walk in that frequency of joy and love, which I believe is the true call on my life, I am an agent of joy. That is what I see in the world. I don't see the suffering, and it's not ignoring it. It's just that the joy frequency I'm holding is,
It's
you
higher.
know, for to use a
Mhm.
new age word, is manifesting that in the world and materializing it.
Well, we
Um,
we are manifestors. That's the Christ said that. You
mm,
can do as I do and more. That's what that means. He wasn't just talking because he wanted to hear his voice. Um, and he taught us, and where I think people get lost is to not kind of give it their all. That, it's very convenient to go to church for an hour. And it's not wrong. It's not a judgment, but then live it the other 6 days in 23 hours. That's the challenge.
mhm,
And that's the where you're connecting to your higher self. The astronauts, when they first went into space, were stunned that there weren't lines. They could see the weather patterns going across all the different nations the lines we drew, they don't have anything to do with anything.
yeah, these fences and borders are made up by humans.
Right. We decided that we
Manifested,
could, that we,
manifested.
and that we can own the planet Earth. And the planet Earth is telling us very clearly by the weather changes that we're experiencing now, we cannot.
Mhm. Yeah,
We
we are
have to
like,
be synergistic with, and, in quantum physics, when quantum physics came about, Einstein talked about this. He called it spooky, uh, like woo woo stuff. I mean, he wasn't comfortable with what he'd come up with. And he was completely right in the sense that what he did come up with was quantum physics. And what we now know is quanta is both waves and particles, depending on what the observer wants, which means we're manifesting the reality of that pure consciousness or that pure energy
mhm.
by our observation.
Right, yeah. And just for anyone listening to this, if you're not tracking, like there this is an actual science that's exploding right now, where they're beginning to understand there's a relationship between the microtubules in our brain and how it interprets and projects and like writes reality.
Right.
And it's connected to like how black holes behave. And it's becoming very clear as we grow in our understanding of the sciences, for those who approach it with curiosity rather than like a predetermined conclusion, that there is more to life and spirit and how human participation affects everything that's going on around us than what we have previously been aware of.
Right. Or even believed. But
Right.
our beliefs are based on what our parents teach us, or our culture teaches us, or our group teaches us. And though it's well intended, it always has a limitation. It's the experience of that person, and you're back to the filter.
Mhm.
You're back to the car crash. None of the six people are wrong, but none of them are completely right either.
Mhm.
They're not describing what's actually happening.
Yeah, that's funny. That's something I've been saying for a while. Like, it's funny how sometimes you have to speak in what seems like riddles because whatever this three-dimensional reality we're in is not sufficient to explain. Uh, my language is not sufficient to explain, and it never will be, what their true reality is. And something that I've said a lot is we are all right and we're all wrong, but we're mostly wrong, but we're mostly right when we come together, like when we can collaborate
A
in our
beautiful way of putting it, Rachel. That's true.
because we are all
Right,
right because we are like writing the story. We are the pen. We are the expression of creation and
right.
what continues to write creation. And yet the Bible talks about sin entering the world. We're wrong in believing that we are individual and separate from one another. And anything born out of that hyper individualistic understanding, we're likely to not see the full story because we don't have the full perspective of one another and the reality that we're writing together.
Which is why he got 12 disciples, which is why he picked the most ordinary people, um, is
Mm,
to teach us what that looks like. How does community work? How does that common thread, and how do you help everyone to connect to that from wherever it is that they are? And some
mhm.
is our work, and some of it is our faith, and some of it is the God light that is already present.
Yeah.
And we're all godlike, all of us. And the guy you hate down the street, not you, but people, is also godlike.
That's
The
so funny.
person that you think you're better than is
Yeah.
actually no better or worse than you are, and they also are godlike. So
Yeah.
then, if we act from that, because that's what we're taught, then what? How
Yeah.
what do we manifest? What do we create? And we're
Something
creating all the time.
something I've been called to lately is to actively build the bridges of reconciliation with people who I have felt the most hurt by.
That's
um,
cool.
Especially the church and believers. So I'm going back to church now because
Wow.
I love that you mentioned. I love that you mentioned, church isn't just about the hour long service gathering. It's about the rest of the week. And like that's pretty a well-known concept within
Mhm.
evangelical spheres. Like church is not about Sunday, it's about Monday through Saturday. But I've also realized through learning about energy and the ways of energy, which I do have more questions about that in a bit, but
Okay.
through learning the ways of energy and understanding my existence and my flow and my purpose in terms of energy, that there is a reason we gather together. There is a reason why you gather with the indigenous communities that you gather with. There is power when we're together. You
Mhm.
know, the Bible says where two or more are gathered, I am
You're
in your
my
midst.
name. Right.
And that power of the divine in unity, and even the non-speakers on the telepathy tapes, they say love is anything that unifies. Love is anything that brings people together. And so sorry, I dropped my crystal. One second. I have the I always have to be like moving, and it's hard to sit still in front of a microphone. So I
I'm,
like,
I'm the same. You can tell that I have the same neurological difference.
yeah. So I have a little fluorite that I just dropped that I'm like, but
Good.
let's see. We're talking about unity. We're talking about community. You can't spell community without unity. I'm going back to church and building bridges, mending wounds, tearing down walls. And confronting situations that have been incredibly traumatizing and painful for me,
Hmm.
because I realized that in unity and in stillness, there is no fear.
Right.
And it's that, like, I finally understand these Old Testament stories of, like, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death,
No evil.
I will fear no evil. And realizing that most other human beings who hurt us and traumatized us, like, they're not all narcissists. They're just people who are deeply wounded. And it's this, like, generational cycle that keeps on going. And at some point, somebody has to stand up and say, no, if we're the Jesus people, if we are the unity people, then we need to practice it Monday through Saturday. I am willing to admit every single fault and to do whatever work is necessary to cultivate that and to cultivate unity, because I think a lot of spheres and spaces, like whether it's evangelical churches or, whatever religion, denomination, faith tradition, we've adopted the modern philosophy of, like, me and mine. I save up for me and mine. This is my journey, my purpose, which, yes, that's part of it, but it's the service to self. And in service to self, we see people as disposable, and that we can cut people out of our lives, which sometimes putting a proximity between people, you and someone who's harmful, like, that's necessary. I'm not saying people should, like, let harmful people into their lives, but the majority of the time we're called to communication, humility, working to understand people, understand someone else's experience. Like, that is empathy. I would like to know if you have any insights or prescriptions for people who are doing the work of personal development right now, or healing from trauma, whether that's religious trauma or spiritual trauma, childhood trauma. There's an endless variety of trauma that our broken society individuals are healing from.
Trauma is really what drives fear. And then the whatever the flavor of trauma, I don't, and that's not to diminish it, but the narrative of that trauma is what creates the fear for us. And anytime you're operating from fear, you're not operating from love, self-love, or the ability, so I would tell people, seek any help that you think will help you. If meditation calls you, great. When I first started meditating, I couldn't sit still at all, like at all. I was a foot shaker. And so I had to do walking meditation because there was just no way I was going to sit 20 minutes anywhere and not move. Find There's so many different tools. I mean, and we're so lucky to have this thing, this phone that's a computer that you and I can see each other. I mean, the advent of that is the last 50 years, 40,
Mhm.
that we have the way to connect. So I meditate with a group um, uh, several times a week that is I've never met these people physically. It's just a meditation group that I was interested in. A friend of mine introduced me and they accepted me. I
Aw.
then go and do the indigenous ceremonies. I have an Episcopal church that I go to here um, to nourish myself spiritually and also to connect with a larger community of people here. And I would tell people two things. One is to ask for help, either physical, like this podcast is a help, right? They're going to run into it, they're going to tell their friends about it, and hopefully some piece of this that you and I are talking about will be helpful to everyone, no matter how they hear it, right? But also ask God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. For me, it's all one thing, for help. Ask Jesus for help. And then read and input into your brain what is going to help you manifest the best life you can have and help you heal. Hurt people, trauma, and most of us have some form of it, hurt people, and heal people, heal people.
Hmm.
And it's honestly kind of that simple. So, the humility that you're talking about going back to church and being willing to step back in. Reconciliation is the Ho'oponopono prayer from Hawaii. It is a reconciliation prayer. That is the entire point of it. Because the understanding is that there's a misunderstanding.
Mhm.
And it's not that anyone's trying to do anything to anyone. I mean, of course, that's not true for people who are killing or assaulting children, stuff like that. But they also have a history, probably, of something like that.
Mhm.
And sometimes we have to have a boundary that separates people from us. But I don't believe you should ever put anyone out of your heart, even if they have been very, very hurtful, because you're putting yourself out of your heart on some level, because we're all connected. So you've just sliced off some part of yourself, and I don't ever think that's particularly helpful.
Yeah.
I'm also a big fan, and you couldn't have made me do this when I was 20. Um, of forgiveness, because the way I understand forgiveness is not forgiving is like drinking poison, hoping the other person dies,
Yeah.
and that never works. Now you're just mad. Now you're just replaying the loop over and over again and acting from that loop, as opposed to maybe creating a new reality, or stepping into the reality that you're being given by spirit. you know I could have not bought this place. I would never have known what I was missing, and I could have come up with 20 reasons not to do it. It's, a place I'd never been, which was true. I don't understand snow, also true. I'd never been to Colorado, even though I'd been lots of different places. That was all true. Or I could take the leap of faith. And no one was going to be mad at me if I didn't do X or Y. I just don't believe that God, light, and the universe and all the goodness of the energy of creation is that way.
Mhm.
But I would have absolutely limited my own life.
That's a
So
great
I get to choose. I get
yeah.
to choose on a manifestation. I get to choose whether I listen to the answer, and we're answered all the time. And then as soon as we're answered, if you're not connected to your intuitive self, you're like, oh, but that's just BS, or maybe I'm just hallucinating, or I'm making it up in my imagination, or it's too expensive, or it's too hard, or it's too tiring, or it's too whatever. Then you're not listening. And as long as you know you're not listening, I'm cool.
Mhm.
I'm going to do my best to listen, because when I don't listen, it doesn't go that well.
Yeah. Excuses are faith killers. And,
100.
that I'm the queen of excuses, so I feel like I'm on good authority saying that, like, excuses are a faith killer, and you won't see what it is that you are hoping for if you don't ask for it. And if you
Well,
don't, like, step through, like, I would never have been introduced to you if I didn't have a great act of faith in
100%.
talking to my doctor.
Right. And you would have assumed that your doctor was not willing to help you based on assumptions of whatever you have as an assumption about the
Mhm.
medical field,
Mhm.
which might not be wrong or might be a little bit off. But if you don't take the risk, then you don't have any experiences at all. You just live in your living room and you stay in that um, space.
Yeah.
And again, it's a choice. I would never fault anyone for any choice that they made. But is that going to be the most helpful to you and to society, and to, the reason we come to be humans is to have the human experience, and also to rub up against each other having the human experience. And all of it is good, including the parts that hurt.
Mhm.
It's part of the human experience. We feel disappointment, we feel hurt, we feel betrayal, we feel anger, we feel happiness, we feel joy, we feel, all of those are feelings. We just have judgments about the ones that we prefer.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the Bible says iron sharpens iron,
Right.
and it also says
Hmm.
God is with us in all of that, and, like, some of the visions and experiences I've had, like, I viscerally have seen in every moment of the most agonizing suffering, God is feeling it with
With
us.
us.
Whatever we
100%.
experience, and that specifically in the breath, it's as if we are energetically encompassed, and whatever we experience is imprinted into the memory of God and imprinted into I think this is where I lack language, into the heart of God, that nothing goes unseen or ignored, and that nothing is outside of God's love or the divine creator's love, you know?
All of it.
Mm-hmm.
All of it. So a lot of times people will say to me, especially in the practice, um, where's God? And I'm like, God's right here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why didn't God stop it? Well, it's not God's job to stop it. It's our job to stop it, whatever the it is. When you're a child, you can't stop things. But that doesn't mean that God isn't with you. That just
Mm-hmm.
means that the adults around you who are harming you are unhealed, and they're in the hurt people,
Mm-hmm.
and hurt people hurt kids, which is super easy because any adult has more power than any child, period,
Yeah.
until they don't, when everyone grows up.
And it's well within our power as human beings to come together to end suffering. That's what Jesus is
Yes.
teaching, that the new earth and that in the kingdom of heaven that does
Right.
not exist. So it's free will turned in on itself, that feedback loop turned in on itself, like, which is what you mentioned, forgiveness is so important. Forgiveness is not a philosophy, it is an energetic reality. If we allow that trapped energy, that poison, to stay in our body, that's what we will manifest and materialize. That's what we create. And so we have a world full of resentful, contemptuous people who are living in that feedback loop of fear, who are living in a feedback loop of this like trapped toxic energy, and they
Right.
don't know how to release it or how to protect themselves from it. Because something I've had to accept that I haven't been the most comfortable with because of my upbringing is that we are living in between these energetic forces that transcend our ability to really understand. And there are dark entities and dark forces and attachments that are seeking to keep us locked in deception and in this idea that that we're powerless here in the physical material realm to heal and to bring about a better world. And that's just false. But
It's
they
a lower frequency that they eat,
Mhm.
so you get to choose what frequency you're going to be in every day. You can wake up and not have had a good night's sleep and be cranky as all get out, totally human. And then you can look around and say, oh my God, but the cup of coffee was really good. Or, I'm going to call Rachel and get some support for the fact that I didn't sleep. Or I'm going to go look outside and see that the sky is blue, and I'm going to connect to that.
Mhm.
We constantly can change our frequencies. The dark energies want us to stay kind of in the low end of things
Mhm.
and kind of not connected to our light. Let me put it that way. There's a lot of
Yeah.
ways that people define that, but not connected to our light. And that then keeps us in fear and keeps us in resentment. And then I believe those frequencies eat that,
Yeah.
which is why we have the wars and the Middle East has been at war a couple thousand years, 5,000, I don't even know. It's been a long time, and it's a key spot on the planet. So, it also can be the source. And there's a lot of musical activists that actually get together, Hebrews or people who speak mostly Hebrew, Jews of all flavors, and Arabs of all flavors, and Christians of all flavors, and they sing together,
Mm.
and they fight for peace. And I probably should change that word. It's not fight for peace. They create
Petition.
peace within themselves, and they're trying to infect the rest of the thing. And the truth is, when do we stop killing enough young people to prove that killing is not good? Everyone there, and in situations, and I'm going to talk about one thing in particular. There was a woman who her son was murdered. He was 14 by this 19-year-old kid. I think he was 19, 18, something like that. The guy was adjudicated and he went to prison. And then she got a hold of him. And over a period of years, and while he was in prison, he opened his heart. She opened her heart. He knows he can never unkill her son. He could never not have that happen. But his love for her and her love for him grew so much that they have chosen to be a family, and he's her son, and he watches after and take care of her. Now, what is the transformation that's required for two humans to do that? And then I would tell your audience, seek that out in your own life.
Mhm.
Be that,
That's incredible.
as opposed to being, oh, this young kid who was clearly, too young and, whatever, mad or whatever. This circumstance happened that was terrible, horrible, that hurt my heart so hard. And she forgave him. That's really what the guy Jesus, who we call the Christ, came to tell us and show us physically. It's not like he's going to sit and have a little lecture and then he's going to go to his little palace and, we're all going to decide whether we think that lecture was good or not. Actually lived it.
Yeah.
And do we have that? Yes. Then are we going to use it? And how?
The way that I have experienced it, and I've also heard many other people describe it this way too, including physicists. You mentioned fear and like suffering. It's like the low vibrational frequencies that we're tuned into when we're living in fear, resentment. We're in that feedback loop of unforgiveness. We are holding on to suffering. We are tuning
Mhm.
into that frequency. Gratitude isn't just some like,
Pie in the sky, you're
yeah,
being all
like
new agey.
right. I'm just going to spiritually bypass all of my problems. I mean, like in a way, you're tuning into a reality that exists on top of that low vibrational reality. But
100%.
it is its own reality. Gratitude is a function of physics that brings about the new earth, and forgiveness is the fruit of that. Forgiveness
Absolutely.
is opening up the release valves, and I like to say it's opening up the vents and airing out and moving that energy outside of yourself and refreshing, like photosynthesis. We're photosynthesizing.
What a great analogy, Rachel. Absolutely. And we get to choose. We're so fortunate as humans, because a lot of other animals and beings don't get to choose. My dog doesn't get to choose whether I open the door or not, let him run around outside. It's entirely dependent on me. But we get to choose. And the thing we have control over, and we're always looking for control. And people talk to me a lot about control, and they say, I want to have control. Well, you don't. Well, I don't like uncertainty. It's the existence of all human beings everywhere, all the time. Dolphins are in uncertainty because of how we're dealing with the oceans. Everything's in uncertainty. The question is, how are you going to manifest your uncertainty into a reality that is actually helpful to you and all the beings here on the planet? And then every minute of every day, you're doing that. How you implement your carbon footprint, and all of us have a pretty huge one.
Mhm.
Are you reusing? Are you recycling? I mean, from the smallest thing that you have control over, you have control over what goes into your brain and then what comes out your mouth, and how you deal with the pain you're in, and whether you, what I call, is off gas it on someone else, or
Mhm.
you just deal with your pain, maybe get a therapist, maybe get counseling, maybe go to your minister, maybe, do all of it, spend time with your friends, go take a walk, do some exercise, whatever helps you with that. Or are you going to just pick a fight with your partner because you're having a bad day?
Mhm.
And how is that going to help your bad day?
Yeah. The expansion, or the opening up of our consciousness is responsibly engaging with or taking responsibility for those daily decisions. Every small thought that we think, becoming the wielder of our thoughts,
Hmm.
our emotions, like our emotional energy is like its own weather system. Sometimes whatever arises is not within our control, but we've been given the tools to be able to learn how to process and release that energy to, some
Hmm.
might say transmute it.
Hmm.
S-
Or
Some
mitigate it. Maybe you're not in the place to transmute it that day. Maybe you're too tired and you're too sick
Mhm.
and you're too whatever, but you don't have to yell at the people that love you.
Yeah, yeah. You taught me something that I use daily, and it reminds me of another Bible verse. It's so funny how these like new age concepts you can find the metaphysical all over the Bible. Put on the
Well,
full
the
armor.
Bible was metaphysical. I mean,
Yeah,
it it, it was Judaism. Jesus was a Jew. He wasn't looking to become a Christian, and he wasn't looking to start Christianity. He was looking to evolve our consciousness and teach us. He was a teacher
yeah,
and an amazing prophet and um, energy to show us what God made us and of us.
yeah. No, I mean, all of the healing is energy transference. It's energy
Right.
work and energy healing. There's alchemy, turning water into wine, multiplying the loaves. And then I think it's Paul who writes about putting on the full armor of God and goes into that verse. You taught me like putting on a shield, an energy shield, and I had already kind of developed a version of it.
Mhm.
But you expanded my idea of it, and I would love it if you would share with our listeners like what that looks like, because it is necessary in a world where we're only seeing 4%. There's all kinds of energies and entities and things that transcend our ability to understand, that
Right.
are like passing through us and around us and on other people, and other people are sloughing off their energetic chaos onto us. Like, can you share with us what that energy shielding, or cultivating and putting on your armor looks like?
Yeah. So for me, it's like putting on clothes before you go out of the house. And I believe that, and I've seen in the practice, because I teach people how to do this, that what you believe will protect you is what protects you. So I may believe that light never happens. That's so crazy.
What is it? I can't hear it.
It's a sonic boom off of some plane I can't see.
Oh,
Never happens
wow.
here. I'm so isolated.
That's
Um,
so funny.
it's crazy. Um, so for me, light and fire and certain colors have the effectiveness for me. And you and I talked about that. For other people, I had someone who they felt nothing could penetrate a rose bush. And so their shield was being in the center of a rose bush that didn't prick them, but it was prickly enough on the outside, and I have no idea how big the rose bush was, that they felt like nothing could get through that. It's back to our quantum field.
Mhm.
What we believe honestly does become our reality. And if we believe that some people are terrible, then we sort of give off that frequency, and therefore there's a piece on the feedback loop of that with the people. So I would invite people to really investigate for themselves, inside themselves, because I don't want anyone to think I have something they don't have.
Mhm.
I want them, it's like saying a math teacher has something you don't have. Not if you stay in math long enough. The teacher's just a vehicle. And I believe that because there's so many different energies, and lots of people are super tired all the time now because there's just a lot of chaos on the planet, and a lot of things that are also unhealed that are being revealed forward to the light, which will be great ultimately. And I don't watch the news very much, but like Epstein, Diddy, we can just go through a list of things. Gaza, the oceans.
They're throwing everything at us to keep us in chaos and confusion.
Totally.
Everything. Yeah.
And I would tell people, look around at your life. What do you need to shield from? Maybe your uncle Tom is really not so good for you, because of whatever. It doesn't matter, whatever. Then maybe you just need to have some boundaries with Uncle Tom, and you need to wear shields if you go to Uncle Tom's house because your family encourages you to go on a regular basis or whatever. So second shields for me are just really almost like armor, just like medieval armor.
Mm-hmm.
I put them on. I have it all the way around my body, and it extends 3 feet out into my electromagnetic field, which is mysteriously called the auric field, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just magnet. We're on a magnetic earth. We're in a magnetic universe. I mean, we're going to be part of that. It's not a mysterious thing. It's not a new age thing. It is a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just like all human beings have feelings. Factual. For people to find what protects them, but also God gave us this mouth.
Yeah.
And I also tell people all the time, just because the phone rings or because someone sends you a text that's nasty, doesn't mean you have to answer it or even look at it. I was on a horseback ride out in wilderness. I'm so lucky. And somebody had their phone with them and they said, Fred in Houston is mad at me. And I was like, you are in the most gorgeous place in the universe. Put your freaking phone away and Fred will work it out.
Yeah.
He'll be mad or not mad. He'll be better or worse today or tomorrow, next week. You don't have to talk to Fred. Look around, be in your present life, be in the present moment that you are actually in. And that along with shielding and understanding what your boundaries are and what they need to be will pretty much create the kingdom of heaven inside your own world with the things that you can control. And again, understanding we're on a blue marble. We have a collective consciousness. There's 7.5 billion of us. How we all behave will determine how the marble goes, how peaceful or how warlike or internally or externally. And those are all parts of shields. I use fire mostly and lightning for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be really helpful because I do a lot of work in helping people transmute all kinds of energy,
Yeah.
their own and trauma and other things, and family trauma and people who don't have boundaries and addiction and all the things.
I definitely still have really funky days because I'm a sensitive, porous person. And if there is a word to describe what my spiritual gift is, it would be clairsentience. I feel everything that everybody feels in my
Hmm.
body. And I can sense animosity, negative emotion, even when it's very well concealed. And so not realizing that that's just kind of part of my function and my spiritual my umwelt, my experience of my perception of reality. I didn't realize other people didn't feel that way, so I just thought everybody is like has so much more self-control than I do. Um and that I'm
It
just
would
like
be good if they had some self control because
right.
your porousness would be more beneficial to you.
Even like kind of being a human lie detector, I don't know how I know, but I know that you're full of crap. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're like, watching politicians even as a child. I'm like, well, that's the one my parents are voting for because he says like that, because he talks about God and a Christian nation, but I'm looking at his face and he's a liar. I don't know how I know that, but he's a liar. And
Mm-hmm.
everything he's saying is, I can tell there's evil in his heart. And I remember saying that, and my dad being like, no, that you don't know what you're talking about. You're just so young. But
As
part
opposed
of
to taking it as, oh my God, this child is so young and connected to God that maybe what she's feeling is true.
I'll send this episode to my dad. Thank you. Somebody said. So, part of my daily experience now that has been a game changer for my mental health, like I have successfully, with the help of my wonderful doctor, gotten off of all of my prior medications. I don't have the same kind of health issues I used to have. I still deal with some of them, you know what some of those are. But I have made a daily practice of cleansing my energy through breath work, inhaling, you know, photosynthesizing, inhaling light and beauty, verbalizing it, visualizing that energy, and then holding that in and letting it do its work in my body, and then expelling negative energy through my feet. I've used
That's so cool.
some different techniques. Some I've learned through the Monroe Institute. Some
Great
that I've
institute.
yeah, cultivated myself. And then I use this like shielding up where I go through each layer. I even made an audio recording to kind of help me visualize, like, you know, I'm the musician and I have all my little toys and my microphones. And so
Hmm.
I made like a recording of like I am bathed and enrobed in healing violet light that energizes me and keeps out anything that wishes me harm. The way you explained it to me was you imagine like the scuba suit covering
Yes.
every inch of your body, every orifice, and then even beyond that, like more layers of like I'm encapsulated in a bubble of light, of electricity or a fire or whatever it is that somebody finds strength in or somebody
Yes.
associates, because a lot of this is metaphorical, because the mind and the body don't it's literal, because the mind and the body don't know the difference between what is imagined and what is physically in front of us.
And that is totally backed up by research.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for today.
Yeah.
I'd like to do more of it at some point. I am going to have to go in just a minute because I can hear the car.
Oh,
But
okay. You got your client coming.
I so
Real
appreciate it.
just to end it on a beautiful light note. And I would love to have you back, by the way.
Okay.
There's so many more things I'd love to get into. We didn't get
I'm
into
happy to.
aliens.
Okay. We can
I
totally
want
do
to talk
that.
about it. But let's see. I don't know if you can see, probably not, just because it's so dark. On the couch behind me, you mentioned how your dogs a couple of times and how they're better.
Yes.
I just got a new kitten that found me.
Oh, I see.
And so
Oh, great.
if you and I can come together in unity as dog loyalists and cat loyalists, then anyone can come together in unity.
100%.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much, Tia. Have a beautiful day, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Take care. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.